But again, this judge involved in the case obviously deemed that Mr. Stone was not a flight risk. In fact, Stone had telegraphed that this moment would come, taking great offense to the way feds stormed his house early this morning. That is not unusual or unprecedented, but in this saga, with all the characters around this so-called Russian collusion Mueller effort to sort of get to the bottom of what happened at the 2016 campaign, while they have done so to go to their homes, in Paul Manafort's case and Michael Cohen's case, we've never seen anything like this, where one of the key players, or the alleged key players, was arrested at his home in an early morning invasion of his home. So we're seeing that. Roger Stone saying he's innocent. He will fight for that. Isn't looking for a pardon. Charlie Gasparino here with me now on all of this. Crazy.
I know Roger Stone very well, full disclosure, friendly with him, consider him a friend of mine. I've reported on him as well. I had dinner with him in the summer, and he was convinced he was being indicted at that point. And what he was convinced he was going to be indicted about is ancillary stuff. And he's pretty much on the money on that. You know, they interviewed about 24 people around him, you know, his alleged mistress, and I'm not saying he has one, but someone they thought it was, the gardener at his house. I mean, you name it. They interviewed everybody. And it looked like they were going after tax evasion, whether he was paying his people and disclosing it. So they did what's known in legal circles as a proctology exam on him. And it's kind of interesting that they did not come up with anything. And I'll say anything related to WikiLeaks and the Russians, which is essentially what they were looking at, whether he conspired with Julian Assange, whether there was some quid pro quo involved, where, you know, Julian Assange would break into the database, the Hillary Clinton's emails, and release it. And, you know, if he gave money or if he exchanged a favor, that could be collusion. And that's clearly what they were looking at. Now, what's interesting about this is the pre-dawn raid. And as someone who's covered a lot of white-collar crime,
those stolen emails and his role, allegedly.
If he had a role.
If he had a role. And that's what the Mueller's team is studying. That's at the crux of this.
And even more than if he had a role. I don't think there's, and you got to ask Judge.
And shared it with, with higher-ups.
But I don't think, ask Judge Napolitano about this. I'm not a lawyer.
Sure.
If he spoke to Julian Assange and he said, listen, Julian, I'd like to, can you get some emails from Hillary Clinton, John Podesta? And Julian Assange said, sure, and gave it to him. I don't think that's a crime. If he
and Stone has said, by the way, a number of times that he would never flip on Donald Trump.
He said that.
He told Politico earlier this month that he would have nothing to flip on because he insisted on his innocence, quoting here, because there is no crime.
Right, and he would have to pay for that now, or exchange a favor for it to be a real crime. Now, something is afoot here, obviously. The feds believe he has the keys to the kingdom to Donald Trump. That's why they raided his home. I will tell you, someone who's covered a lot of white-collar crime. Why do they do these raids? And by the way, what they do generally, the FBI...
By the way, Rudy Giuliani was famous for it.
Famous for that. But in more recent times, what they do is they call up CNN, they call up CNBC. They say, listen, we're going to X, Y, and Z's house, show up with a camera. And that's often what happens. They actually do that. I know this for a fact. And why do they do it? Well, if it's a white-collar crime, it's often to humiliate the guy, to show the public we're going after the fat cats. It's also to humiliate the person, the target, into talking. And I think that's what they're trying to do with Roger.
Here's what's a little different in this case. We have to take a break here, but when they went after Cohen, raided his home, and
Michael Cohen.
Michael Cohen, right. And Paul Manafort raided his home.
Right.
It wasn't to grab them, you know, and you've been, you know, indicted and we're going to bring it to the Who House. They did for him. I wonder why. Well,
I think Roger was the most obstinate of all of them. He was going public on everything. And I think they think, remember, Manafort was kind of cooperating at first until he...
And then they claimed that he
lied to them. Right. So remember, when they had something to get out of it, Roger not only refused to cooperate, in their view, and they believe he's hiding something, clearly, he was obstinate. He, went public. He attacked them. And that's when the FBI, and the feds really stick their finger into it.
He's obviously still talking as a guy who admires the president, as Paul Manafort.
Right.
Michael Cohen flipped in order to make a deal, and he did not.
And Manafort, basically, he was leading up to that. They say he lied. So remember, they did not have
Could either both be pardoned by the president?
Everybody can be pardoned by the president, and so could Roger be pardoned.
So do you think Stone kind of held back, waiting for something like that?
We don't know. I don't know. You see, here's the problem with Roger. He's such a BS artist. He's claiming that he was exaggerating his connections with Julian Assange. By the way, I was asked by Sam Nunberg, and my name came up in some of the exhibits in the grand jury. I was asked by Sam Nunberg at some point, would you like to meet Julian Assange? Roger is meeting with him. And I was at a dinner, and I said, sure, what the hell? Pamela Anderson wants to meet me. I'll meet her, too. But this is what we do as journalists.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I never, it's just kind of like, it's not something I care that much about, meeting Julian Assange. I'm more interested in the markets. And then at some point I said, I asked Sam, I think I asked, what's going on with this? He goes, oh, no, Roger's, still trying to work it. And I don't know if there's any evidence he really, had this connection with Julian Assange.
Morning. It just is a little, little heavy-handed, but we'll get an idea. But probably the most colorful, certainly the closest to Donald Trump in this whole saga is getting the scrutiny of the press right now in Bob Mueller's office. The timing is odd, but if they thought that this guy would roll or suddenly start talking to them and make a deal, every indication from Roger Stone just a few minutes ago outside that courthouse is not happening. Not yet, anyway.